Hello, my friends. This is Deepak, and today I have the unique opportunity and privilege to speak with two extraordinary people, and they have a unique agency. It's called Rozana, and Rozana bridges healthcare and diplomacy and facilitates cross-border cooperation between Israeli and Palestinian healthcare institutions, fostering dialogue and understanding. Their mission is to nurture inclusive partnerships that provide equitable healthcare opportunities and elevate the quality of healthcare services. So, first of all, thank you both for joining me, Rozana.
Thank you so much for having us.
And Wajid, is that how you pronounce your name?
Wajdi.
Wajdi. Okay, so this is a unique opportunity to talk to both of you who are doing extraordinary work in the midst of collective insanity, I think. And, you know, my heart breaks when I see the slaughter that's happening right now everywhere, but particularly in this area. And I can only say that it's a very delicate subject to even broach, because no matter what you say, you're perceived as taking sides. And taking sides never works in a conflict like this because there's so many complexities. But one thing is obvious, and that is we are recycling trauma, and this will affect many generations in the future if we understand the science behind epigenetics. So at some point, the bigger issues have to be also addressed. But today, I just want to welcome you and learn from you about the extraordinary work that you're both doing. I have your bios here, but we can post the bios in the next to the video. Right now, tell me a little bit about, and you know, the bios will be available to all that want to check out, and they'll have the appropriate links and tags. But right now, Ronit, tell me about yourself and how you came to be doing what you are doing right now. And then we'll ask Wajid, why am I not learning how to pronounce your name?
You're not alone. Wajdi.
Wajdi. And then I'll have Wajdi say a little bit about his life and his background. So go ahead, Ronit.
So my name is Ronit. I was born in Australia, and I moved here to Tel Aviv when I was 24. You could say that I was brought up in a home where a peace in Israel and Palestine was always the main objective. My father is Israeli. He was a soldier in the 1967 war, a reservist again in 1973, but decided, he met my mum, who was Australian, and he left Israel in the end of 1977 when the right wing came to power. I was born at the beginning of 1978 in Melbourne. And I think that I was kind of brought up in this atmosphere of when there's peace, when there's sanity, we'll move back to Israel. And, you know, I kind of called myself an Oslo teenager because I was 15 or 16 when the Oslo Accords were signed. You know, and it sort of changed my life. I wrote my first paper on Jericho being, you know, the first city that the Israelites entered into, or the Hebrews entered into with Joshua. And it was first city that, you know, became autonomous under the Palestinian Authority for the Oslo Accords. And I then went on to write a thesis. I studied law, and I wrote a thesis about the constitutional laws in Israel and in Palestine, how they relate to women. And then I sort of just entered into this fields. My first job when I moved to Israel was at the Paris Center for Peace, and I've been working in peace building for 2 decades. It's interesting because, you know, it's 20 years that we still don't have peace. And not only do we not have peace, but since those days 20 years ago, you know, we've regressed. But when I work with people like Wajdi and the rest of our team, which is absolutely diverse, and we have a resilience in terms of our desire for peace and a resilience in terms of our values of respect and empathy and understanding, you know, I still feel optimistic that maybe it's taken 75 years of insanity. It may take another 75 years of insanity, but at some point, you know, the brilliant people that live in our region, and there truly are brilliant people who live in Israel and in Palestine and around us, we will be able to come to some kind of solution that demands the kind of courage and creativity that will create a better future for our children. Just on that point, I'm a mum. I have 3 teenage children. That has implications in Israel. And I'm married, not with my husband, but with my work husband, Wajdi, on Valentine's Day.
Wonderful. Wajdi, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak. So my name is Wajdi Bkeirat. I'm 38 years old.
Just 1 second, Deepak, say again.
I said that's the solution. Get married.
Well, let me tell you, when I wrote my thesis, I wrote about creating a civil marriage law to break down the barriers between Israelis and Palestinians, because at the moment there's only a religious marriage law here in Israel. So anyway, back to Wajdi. Sorry for interrupting.
Please, sorry for the interrupt. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my name is Wajdi Bkeirat. I'm Jerusalemite. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, the great city of Jerusalem, the Holy Land, you name it. Jerusalem is very interesting, yet very complicated. And since I was a kid, I was facing this problem with identity while going to school, crossing checkpoints, and at the same time having this Jerusalem ID, which is Israeli ID, but with a Jordanian passport, just a temporary crossing document to cross borders when you want to travel after applying for visas to wherever you want to go. And calling myself or raised on the fact that I'm Palestinian, but nothing from a document's perspective shows this, to be honest. And this, where dilemma starts in your life as a Palestinian lives in Israel or in Jerusalem. So I think the first challenge, or let's say real junction that happened in my life when I was a teenager, my little brother who passed away, but he was diagnosed with cancer and he was a kid by then. And of course, he was treated at Hadassah Hospital, an Israeli hospital, with an Israeli nurse who took care of him just like a mom, just like one of her sons. And she was the closest to him. In the hospital setting, especially in the age that I was in when I was 16, in the middle of the teenage, I realized that the hospital setting is something really amazing. And I think this catastrophe, let's say, and let me call it, that happened to me and my family, left something in myself. And I think that I used it in a good way. And it encouraged me to do what I'm doing and to become what I am now. So after that, I decided to study genetic engineering and biotechnology in Jordan. And I think one of the motivations for that was the secrets of that disease and what happens behind the scenes. I just wanted to know more, and I was really good in school, let's say. I got the first students on the school by then. So before that, my dad decided to open an organization to help children with cancer, especially Palestinians living in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, because the challenges and the obstacles are so many. There are language obstacles, there are socioeconomic obstacles, there are, of course, lack of awareness and lack of knowledge about the disease and the help for the family and the support. So he decided to open this charity or NGO, and I was a volunteer with him for a time of maybe 8 years. And this gave me the courage as well to become wanting more to continue my studies. So I did my master's in medical neurobiology when I came back to Israel. I applied for the Hebrew University and I did my master's in medical neurobiology. And then I entered the world of peace building, which started almost 15 years ago when I was dealing with managing health projects in Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, bringing people together, health officials, trying to do some more things than the regular things that had been done, trying to stop the diseases to be spread and try to move forward and forget about the obstacles that we have in the road. Just giving the chance to the people and giving them the opportunity to know each other is just a bless, and it gives you a feeling of, you're doing something, and life should be much easier than what it looks like if you just give people to know each other. And then I started my PhD in mental health and psychosocial support and enhancing resiliency for people. And that's my field. That's who I am, and that's my world. I love to work with Rozana, and it represents every single part of me and of my personality. And yeah, that's it. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I saw so many videos for you.
Thank you. How did you meet?
How did Wajdi and I
Okay,
meet?
that's really interesting.
We have Gabriella Wright joining us. She's part of the foundation and very involved in humanitarian efforts and peace building. So we have a program called Never Alone, which we can talk about later. But tell me, how did you meet?
Hi, Gabriella. Nice to meet you. Wajdi approached me on LinkedIn. Like, this is the power. There is some wonderful things about social media. So he approached me on LinkedIn. He loved what he read about Rozana, and went to Jerusalem, met Wajdi. We had an immediate chemistry, and we said, bring it on. Let's see what we can do together. And actually, since we met on that, what was it? Sort of the summer of, when was it? 2022. We've been working together. And as I said,
And you did get married, right? At some point?
we did. We had like a Jewish Muslim wedding, and it was really lovely. And his wife came, and my husband came, and his baby came, and my three kids came too. And we lived happily ever after.
So, Wajdi, with your background in genetics, and we'll move on to the work very quickly. But with your background in genetics, let's say we did DNA analysis of Ronit and yourself. I think we'd find that basically you're almost the same genetically with Abraham as your ancestor. Would you agree?
I would agree, although Ronit is Australian, but I'm sure we have so many commonalities. And as she said, the
He's
chemistry.
Australian, but a Jewish background, right? Ancestry.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I think we came from the same roots.
Same
That's for
gene,
sure, from a
right?
genetic perspective.
Yeah. So tell us about this organization, Rozana, and why don't you start, Ronit, and then we'll ask Wajdi about his experiences as well.
So Rozana is a health diplomacy organization. We were established 10 years ago in Australia, but really it was only about the last 3 years where we kind of moved away from small funding projects that brought Israelis and Palestinians together in healthcare to really understanding the needs in Palestine, the health development needs in Palestine, creating the infrastructure or the tapestry of relationships we needed with hospital partners to address these needs and develop collaborative projects in healthcare. So in the last couple of years, we launched small pilots in nursing with the joint training for nurses, joint training for doctors, joint training for psychologists. And through these pilots, we were able to raise institutional funding and scale the projects. So, today in our nursing hub, we have 480 nurses, Israeli and Palestinian nurses who have, learnt specialist fields together, undertaken peace building workshops together. The Israelis who don't speak Arabic learning Arabic, the Palestinians are learning Hebrew. They also, just from the field, wanted to learn English so they could better communicate. Also, we've got, doctors training together. Every 2 months, we have 10 Palestinian and 10 Israeli doctors that come together to learn advanced trauma care. We have psychologists that come together every single week. They learn together advanced PTSD training methods for adolescents and youth. And we also have, projects. We have this wonderful project called Women for Women, where we've trained a team of allied health professionals who are delivering primary health care and women's health to women in Area C of the West Bank. And they're supported by Sheba Beyond, which is Sheba Hospital in Israel's virtual hospital, using tech and innovation to really provide ongoing training and ongoing clinical support. Another project we have is called Wheels of Hope, whereby we bring Palestinian patients to hospitals in East Jerusalem and in Israel. They have to cross checkpoints. Transportation is expensive, and our volunteers and our minibuses help facilitate all of this. I mean, that's just a peppering of some of the work that we do, but all of that kind of makes this idea of health diplomacy, where every single initiative that we undertake has an Israeli and a Palestinian health partner.
Wajdi, what's been your experience?
So I'd like to add to what Ronit said, and the aspect of research and the aspect of peace building that we're doing throughout all of our projects. So every single project that Ronit mentioned, I try to assess. We start with a baseline assessment to see the need of the community that we're serving. And then we go and continue doing some monitoring and evaluation follow-up throughout the lifetime of the project. And we try to enhance the social cognitive empathy and to increase understanding and cooperation between Palestinians and Israelis, because we believe in doing so that we can create this fertile ground and peaceful environment, hopefully. Also, in the research side, we created a research strategy that can also add some aspects of publishing some papers, academic papers, based on the results that we're getting. So we don't only do peace building or enhancing empathy and understanding, but also we do some new researches and discoveries, hopefully to be published in international magazines as well.
Wajdi, why don't you share just maybe some of the results that you've had from the research that you've undertaken?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that's very broad, but I can say that we have so many successes in the people-to-people aspect. Like we achieved brilliant results between doctors in the advanced trauma and life support, where we bring physicians together and we bring them only for 2 days. And if you see the results that we achieved, it's unbelievable, because you really can create something even in a very short time, just by letting people do something in common. They have a common interest in something. They just practice together and talk to each other and express themselves freely. And then you see high levels of understanding, cooperation, empathy, contextual understanding.
Desire to work together again, right? There's always Wajdi comes back with 95% of participants want to do more joint training, joint learning, knowledge sharing.
Yeah, yeah. They all agree, like 100% of them agree that it's super important to transfer this message of cooperation, and how important it is to deliver this message to the decision makers and to the upper level, to take it to track one people and to have an impact. Because, I believe that the health professionals we work with are in the middle, and they can impact the community as well as decision makers and people in the official sides.
There's so much to learn from both of you and your experiences. Um, I, you mentioned, Ronit, that you had how many people on staff now, and how many people are involved in the organization?
We have international affiliates around the world, in Australia, in the US, in the UK, Germany. We've just established in Switzerland, and we have a regional operations team. In terms of professional numbers, we're very small. We have only about 15 professional members of the team, but we have got these boards and volunteers and what we call our health diplomats, who are the alumni of our programs and who continue to want to participate in the things that we do.
How many people on the ground, say, right now?
On the ground in the region, we have 7 people.
Oh,
Yeah. So
and
and everybody is different. So, we have 2.5 Muslims, 2.5 Christians, 2.5 Druze. We have a very, very diverse team, which really adds to everything, really, just in terms of the development and the implementation. We're now looking at, we've been looking at different, for the last year, we've had this engagement thinking, we want to bring in a formal peace building component to all of our health interventions. And we've done bits and pieces, and we've never kind of found something that we feel has been satisfying, not for us and not for the participants. So we've begun developing our own bespoke peace education course that will look at, you talked about, Deepak, the future generations of trauma, but what we want to explore also in this component is the, generations of trauma that already exist. And it does. Here I'm wearing my grandmother's blazer. My grandmother, who died 25 years ago, but she and her, my grandfather were Bergen-Belsen survivors. And, this kind of trauma is so much a part of society here in Israel and in Palestine, right? And I think that there's probably a lack of understanding that the other have of the other, right? And it's just so important not to reconcile narratives, but to have a level of understanding and create empathy between between people. Because as Wajdi said, the minute you break down that barrier, the minute you see somebody as a person, as another human being with a history, with a past, with a family, with roots, you recognize their trauma, they recognize your trauma, and then you can start to move forward. So with this new peace building, peace education that we are specifically developing for our healthcare professionals within this, broader framework of health diplomacy, we really believe we can take that level of understanding even further. So it's not just having a clinical, something clinical that we have in common, but we have a deeper connection.
so Two questions, and then we'll get a little deeper into the whole issues right now. One is, where does the funding come from? Is it international? Is it non-profit organizations, governmental agencies? Where is the funding coming from?
The funding initially, as I said, for the first few years, it really was private philanthropy that was funding, small initiatives. Today, as we've scaled, funding is coming from the American government, from the British government. We're hoping through the Australian government, we'll be getting some funding. And then, of course, from foundations and private philanthropy still.
And then the second question is, with what has happened in the recent months, how's the operation working? Are you disrupted right now? Are you still very active? How's it going?
Wajdi, why don't you answer?
So to be honest, our programming has continued, but of course it had been altered in so many projects. But we happily and proudly found solutions and plan Bs and contingency plans to all of the programs that we have. So we had some programs that we made some adaptations to. For example, the nursing program is bringing nurses from different Palestinian and Israeli hospitals and give them some type of skills in clinical context and also peace building. So they were really, let's say, preservative, and they didn't want to meet with the other because they were afraid of their own governments, they were afraid of their own communities, and they have their own issues as well. Because I believe that the two communities are now in survival mode, and they just want to take care of themselves and their families. So we touched based on this, and we decided to give them some mental health and psychosocial support to enhance their resilience in work and to enhance their resilience in their family and friends relationships because of what they are seeing and what they are witnessing as they are in the field, and they are witnessing everyday casualties and traumas, and it's not an easy situation. So this is how we kept our commitment to the program, and we really tried to help them based on what they really need. Also kept the Hebrew and Arabic language courses because we also provide, I'm not sure if we mentioned this, but we also provide language course for each side. So for the Palestinians, we provide them with a Hebrew course, and for Israelis, we provide them with Arabic course, so they can communicate better with each other. By the way, the professionals, I'm sorry, just last point, professionals that we brought to give mental health support is also part of one of our programs, which is called Binational School of Psychotherapy, in which we created an alumni of mental health professionals that they provide mental health support to people and communities. Sorry.
So as we look at this whole situation, from far, I'm sitting here in New York City. Gabriella is also here in New York City. As we look at this from afar, I can't even understand how you could be functioning when everybody is in survival mode. It's not just the mental issues and the physical trauma. It's heartbreaking to see that, but also it's mind-boggling that you can still be functioning as you are. But it seems like you're still going on, right?
The truth is, all of our programs have continued. We even had 2 Palestinian physicians start their subspecialty training on the 1st of January. So literally in the midst of war, 2 Palestinian physicians, one started at Sheba in the pediatric ICU, another cardiologist started at Hadassah in electrophysiology. They're both learning Hebrew. Rozana has facilitated that. The binational school went online, so it was able to continue. We even had last week, we had our first face-to-face program in advanced trauma. We weren't able to bring over physicians from the West Bank, but we did have Palestinian physicians who are in the Palestinian East Jerusalem hospitals, and other Palestinian physicians who are in the Israeli hospitals. And we managed to get 20, like we always have, 20 Israeli and Palestinian physicians doing this, course together. For the nursing program, we're kind of looking at different solutions. We can bring the Palestinian more. It's difficult to bring 20 nurses over to an Israeli hospital and have, as you said, considering the situation, and we're all in survival mode here, but we're bringing them to Medical Simulation Center in Israel, and we're doing the training there anyway, and we're just trying to maintain some humanity and maintain these open channels of communication, to know that one day, and hopefully in the very, very near future, this war and this craziness and this awful, awful death and destruction will end, and we'll have to think about how we move forward. And there's nobody going anywhere, so we're going to have to move forward together, right? So as far as Rozana is concerned, we've got to push ahead, right? We've got to keep going, and we've got to keep these we've got to keep the rational majority being rational, working together, and understanding that our future is intertwined, and there's no other way to go about it.
So I listened to both of you, and we'll share some of the minuscule efforts we have in comparison to your heroic efforts. And at the end, I'd like to ask you both to share with the world and with everyone who's going to be watching this, because we hope to reach millions of people. I'd like you to share what your ultimate dream is with this project, and how people can get involved internationally. But before we do that, looking at the psychophysiology, the biology of trauma, the way I think of it, and it's been, as we say, you're living not only future generations, but our current generation is suffering the effects of intergenerational trauma. I think it all starts with a deeper understanding that in one way or another, I mean, this community, the Israeli community and the Palestinian community in general, of course, the trauma is huge, but in some way or another, the history of humanity is the history of trauma. All we read in history is about war. When's the last time you read about anything that we could all kind of aspire to? All of our history is wars and conflicts, and it starts with this perception of the separate self. And once you have that perception, I'm separate from you, you're Palestinian, I'm Israeli, or whatever, and the other way around, then that starts the cycle of trauma. And what we call anger is just the memory of that trauma. What we call hostility is the desire to get even, seek vengeance, which then recycles the trauma, of course, leads in many cases to guilt and shame and fear, because we haven't been able to handle it in the past. And ultimately, all of this results in depression, and epigenetically it keeps passing on. So how do we actually start to begin to even address it? In our work here, with programs like Peace is the Way, we have embodied 9 principles in peace building. But after listening to you, I think we can embody much more. The first thing is treat your perceived adversary with respect. And if you don't do that, you don't even get to first base. Second principle, recognize that there's the perception of injustice on both sides. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a conflict. Both sides feel injustice. The third principle that we try to embody is there's a role for forgiveness, not necessarily because you think that the other person deserves forgiveness. I don't think either side will ever feel that the other person deserves forgiveness, but we all deserve peace. And that can't happen unless we embody this idea of forgiveness. And then, of course, principles of emotional intelligence, not to be belligerent, not to engage in, I am right and you are wrong, not to use verbal formulas and stereotype the other person. Recognize that, we might have different ideological frameworks and religions, but if we bring that into the conversation, we never get anywhere. And also that fear is a big factor. The more violent the people are, the more fearful they are. I mean, there's no question about it. And those are the 9 principles we have kind of executed. But what you're saying is, if you have a common goal, if you have shared vision, if you maximize each other's strengths, if you create a social and emotional and spiritual bond, and you're not worried about the diversity that's coming in, you just said Christians, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, all coming together, then there is hope. And in the past, many years ago, I engaged in a very small way with Palestinian and Israeli students who were either playing sports together or they had a musical orchestra together. I even actually engaged with some very senior people at one time. I said, share your childhood with each other, your perceived enemies. Talk to each other about, when you first fell in love, where did you go to school? So listening to your love story was very, very encouraging for me. That's what ultimately matters. So before I ask you to share what your vision is, what your hope is, what kind of help you could use, and how we can expand your awareness, we have a program here at the Chopra Foundation. Gabriella Wright is the co-founder of that program. It's called Never Alone. And what we do is we try to bring people together online, but also offline. But right now, mostly online, with certain principles. Start a dialogue, start a social support system. It's doing pretty well because we are offering courses like Peace is the Way, Soul of Leadership, but it needs to be expanded. I think if you take a bigger cause like yours, we could probably expand our program and be of some use to you. So Gabriella, briefly share a little bit about Never Alone.
Lovely to be with you all, and congratulations on your wonderful work. I couldn't agree more that as long as we have a common vision, which is to relieve each other's suffering, because ultimately, Never Alone, which I'm the co-founder of with Dr. Deepak Chopra, came from a place of deep, deep suffering. I lost my little sister to suicide 5 years ago. And of course, it's a personal story. But when the bridge comes from a personal story into a collective story, that's where really the common purpose comes together, the common vision. And I feel that what you're doing on the ground is the ultimate implementation of what we were just discussing and what Dr. Deepak Chopra was discussing about love in action. How can we ignite the common vision that allow us to heal? Because the person who is serving is also healing in the process. And I think that is one of the most important things to underline here, is that Never Alone started from a personal story. And I know you have both personal stories because you are both involved, and everyone on the chain, the love in action chain, has the personal story that is ready to be, quote unquote, shared with the world. And the sharing of the world promotes the fertile ground for healing. And healing is really the common vision here, because once we don't want the suffering that we have on other people, and that's where peace communication starts. But it's not really about the communication of what we say, but it's about how we commune with each other, and more than the identities, which Dr. Deepak Chopra spoke earlier, it's the sense of the separate self. So how do we go beyond the sense of the separate self, that you are that person and I am here? We go to this common ground of who we truly are. So the programs at Never Alone, our flagship program, is under an umbrella called Freedom from Suffering. So ultimately, how do we commune with who we are beyond our conditioning? So where we're from, what religion we practice, what traumas we have, because we all have them, like Deepak said earlier. And so it's really going on the adventure, embarking on the adventure to the journey to self, which is truly not the selfish person, but the selfless experience of being human. And we have Peace is the Way, which is a wonderful program, which I'm sure you can literally add on and give those 2 days of workshops that you were mentioning before. You could just add that on, and that will be something that can carry them through for the next 6 weeks, because it's a 6-week course, but it's very gentle and it's very easy. And we can even co-create workshops together that we can do online and offline and person. I would love to help facilitate that and bring our network of, eventual volunteers who would love to participate in this, because we are all experiencing ongoing trauma. And whether it's images from social media, whether it's ideas that are thrown around constantly, everyone has an opinion. And Dr. Deepak Chopra said it earlier, we have to stop being right. We have to give that up peacefully. And so a lot of what we do is, how do we anchor these principles in something very concrete? And the Love in Action movement that Dr. Deepak Chopra was speaking about is around the 4 A's. So we do a very little basic checking in ourselves before we embark on everything to build community. And it's around, how do we bring attention to what we need, to our suffering? How do we bring deep appreciation? So listening, deep listening. How can we show our affection? What is that deep caring? How can we bridge that? And lastly, which is probably the most important one, is how do we accept just what is, without thought, anything. Just sometimes we have to accept to be able to build the next chapter of our lives on, and to release trauma. So these are very simple tenets that we use, that are the 4 A's, Love in Action. And under that, we have Freedom from Suffering, and we have all of these other programs that we just truly want to implement, and make sure that these become like the sound of our souls. I'm going to be a little bit esoteric there, but we all have a soul and we all have a heartbeat, and that is definitely the common language that we all share together. And so being here and participating is an honor, and I cannot wait to see how we can grow and co-create all together, and just enhance everybody's personal story. And I'll end with that. Everyone's personal story is a human story, and we are the great human story. And I believe that needs to be shared with the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. And just to add to that, we are now incorporating another course as part of this. It's called the Happiness Prescription, because happy people don't hurt people, only hurt people hurt people. And so we are refining that, and we'd like to offer that with you, and also, learn from whatever you're doing as well. So before we leave, I'd like to ask both of you, what's your dream? What do you hope to accomplish, and how can the world get involved?
If
Ronit,
I may start, Ronit.
please go ahead, Wajdi.
Yeah, because I just want to comment on what you said. Gabriela, I'm so sorry for your loss, and your speech was really inspiring. Thank you so much for offering this opportunity, and we also look forward to work together. What you said about happy people can bring happiness to people, or can accept people. In one of the reports that we have, in one of the policies that we have, it talks about the macro context of Israel, Palestine, and the behaviors that are based on the policies, which include discrimination, disposition, violence, racism. which all behaviors that diminish the humanity of both Israeli and Palestinian communities. And, studies showed that those who are charged with implementing these policies just lose sensitivity to those who are hurt. They become hard and cold and unfeeling to the plight of the oppressed. They turn off their compassion and empathy for others. So I think that you touched based on something that is one of my personal dreams, just to raise and enhance awareness about mental health, because I think we're so far away from knowing this world, and people just deny, because I believe that people do not accept the fact that there is mental well-being, and there should be some improvements from the inside in order to face the outside and the environment. So I always believe in the diseases do not know borders, and that's one of the slogans that I really respect. And I look forward to have both communities living side by side with peace, dignity, and equity, and love and peace. Thank you all.
Wajdi, thank you. Ronit?
So on October 1st, so you're talking about 6 days before the war started, I went to Hebron and I visited a couple of hospitals and a couple of NGO partners in Palestine. And the head of the hospital has become a very close friend. And he made sure that I got a vegan meal, which is not an easy feat in Hebron, right? He made sure that I got to take the best knafe. I don't know if you guys eaten knafe before, but it's amazingly tasty and my kids love it. Made sure that I was going back to Tel Aviv with the best knafe for my children. And then a week ago, his mother passed away, and I sent him a message, and and I told him how I felt, and how when my mother passed away 15 years ago, it was the greatest loss of my life. And and he wrote back to me, and he was so touched, and he said, "Oh, your message has made me feel so much better." And I said to him, "When the time is right, that is going to be very, very soon, I'm going to come and give you my message in person." And I suppose when I think about what kind of future we're looking at, my vision is a future where my relationship can be not something that I can do around wars, that we can go and I can visit him and he can visit me, and we can make sure that our organizations and his hospital is so willing to cooperate. And it really comes from the top. It's about that kind of leadership that understands the future and takes an empathetic and a practical approach to how do we get to a better place. And I think that when I think about that vision of the future, I think about that kind of relationship, being able to manifest itself in every facet of life, that kind of leadership that he demonstrates to show the kind of leadership that we need in our region. That's my vision. And again, thank you, Gabriella. I really am looking forward to seeing how we can co-create and how we can bring in some of those ideas now into this peace education course that we are now designing. I'd love to do it together.
Well, we have a lot to learn from you. And once again, we've been speaking with the leaders of Rozana Health Diplomacy. You can find out all about them. And if you feel the need to help, we would, of course, be overwhelmed with your need to help, but also your ideas. Ultimately, as has been said before, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Peace is the way. There is no other way to peace. We start with that, start with the highest first. It's been a great privilege, honor to speak to both of you. And Gabriella, thank you for joining and sharing the vision of Chopra Foundation and Never Alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. Gabriella. We really feel so privileged to have had an opportunity to be on your show and to meet you both and to hear you both. And we look forward to working together in the future.
Sure, it's a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.